I have a lot of complicated feelings on the topic. So for those of you that are not inside the industry, what most sports books, if not all sports books do, is if you win too much money, they either ban your account or they limit you.
The Business of Betting podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. 4 out of the top 5 U.S. operators personalize player experiences with Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/businessofbetting. And if you like what you see, you will get your first month free.
What is up, everybody? I am Jason Trost, the host of the Business of Betting podcast. Welcome back after a long summer break for episode 220. Today, we're going to be shaking it up a little bit. One of my favorite podcasts is a podcast called the Prof G podcast by Scott Galloway. If you don't know him, I highly recommend you check it out. He's got various podcasts that talks about technology, markets, and politics. One of the formats he does is he has people, his day job, or at least sometimes, is he's a college professor. And so modeling after college professors, he's got this thing called office hours where people send in a recording of their question and he kind of answers their question. So we're going to sort of model that. We don't have any questions today, but we're going to sort of seed it with some questions and see how it goes. So what have I been up to? So it's been a super long summer. My kids go to a French school in London. And one of the things that I've learned about this French school is that the French school, I guess unsurprisingly, but it's surprising to me, their summer holidays are 2 or 3 weeks longer than UK schools. And I really felt it this week, this summer. It was a long summer, but we did some fun things. We went and visited my parents and my brother in Connecticut. One of the really nice moments I had in Connecticut this summer was, I moved away when I went to college when I was 18 years old or something like that. And after moving away, I kind of sort of thought where I grew up was quite, it was a nice place to grow up, but it's quite boring. And going back I think I haven't been back in 5-6 years. I had this really kind of nice moment having my kids and hanging out with my brother and my my parents and my kids' grandparents. And I really felt it's kind of a nice place to grow up. You can go catch lobsters, you can go catch crabs, you can go fishing. The beach is right there. There's museums, there's a casino we went to the Foxwoods Casino to go visit the museum that they have there, which is quite nice. So it's one of those moments it was kind of the first time I went back home and really felt that it was a nice place to grow up, and I could see myself wanting to put my kids in a situation like that. Right now, I have 3 kids in the middle of London, and it's quite, even though dad likes the urban environment, and so does mom, it's quite hectic having 3 little kids in an urban environment. The rest of the summer I spent in France. My wife is from France, and we have a house there, and so we saw all my nieces and nephews and brother-in-laws and father-in-laws and mother-in-laws. And the French, I've come to really like some aspects of French culture, and some other ones are not so fun. But some of what makes French culture so great, they love coming together. They love meals. They love very slow meals. They love connection. They love discussion and debate. Those are all great things. But what I've noticed about French culture is they're very, very ritualistic, which is part of what makes it so luxury and fun to be around. But there are so many rules. So even just something as pouring wine has a lot of rules. Who pours the wine? When can you drink? What's the order that you drink it in? And so, being in a French family for the last 10 years, I've kind of learned these codes. But when it's kind of summer holiday, and as an American, sometimes you just want to, watch TV and eat nachos and things. But every time you have a meal, you still have to follow the same pattern. And one of the, I guess the interesting takeaway is the thing that makes it so special is also the thing that makes it so frustrating. The very special thing about French dinners, very ritualistic, there's like a ceremony to it, which makes it so nice, but at the same time, it makes it slow, frustrating, and inflexible. So that's life in a nutshell, pros and cons, swings and roundabouts. But very happy to be back. I'm back in cloudy London. It's cloudy today, but it's actually been quite nice the last few days. But I think everybody that lives around London knows that is short-lived, and we will see the sun again in May. So the way you get sun when you live in London is you have to watch movies with sunny scenes in it and dream that you will be there in another 9 months and try to get through it. So buckle up, those of you that live near the Arctic Circle. So moving on, let's start with our first planted question, and then we'll chat about it. Prediction market platform Kalshi has been in the news the last couple of weeks after a federal judge overturned a decision by the CFTC that blocked election markets. The CFTC quickly appealed, and Kalshi had to once again suspend any election betting markets. The CFTC's main argument seems to be that offering prediction markets could threaten the integrity of the election and outcome. What do you think of this? And why do you believe that the prediction markets are the boogeyman that the CFTC suggests? So I have a lot of feelings on this topic. Generally speaking, prediction market betting or election market betting is a very, very wonderful thing. It's indeed the reason I founded Smarkets, because I thought combining a market with an election, something that everybody cares about, is such an important tool. There's been a real moment this election that I think largely thanks to Polymarket, and I'll get to them in a second, but largely thanks to Polymarket, there's kind of been a moment where the prediction market vibe has kind of crossed over into the mainstream. And I've never seen so many people discussing the betting market price. And it's been a great thing. So as somebody that has followed elections for a long time, betting markets are bar none the society's best tool for trying to figure out what's going on. So it's a very important tool for society. And I'm sure you can get some cases of manipulation. So I was actually listening to one of Prof G's podcasts, and he was talking about, if I'm RFK Jr. and I know I'm going to back out, what's stopping me from going on to the market and trading against, selling myself to sort of monetize my position. Now, one of the first retorts to that is if they monetize their position, it'll change the price of the prediction market, which should make it more accurate, and everybody benefits. So there's some kind of benefit to insider trading. My guess is in the United States, there aren't really strong laws around this. There are laws in the UK. You're not allowed to bet on outcomes that you already know the event, the way the event is going to go. You're not allowed to bet on something that's known already. It's against the law. In the US, generally speaking, futures markets don't have insider trading protection laws. And I think because this market has been so illegal, or has been illegal historically in the United States for a long time, that there's probably no tight laws about this. But I haven't seen a lot of evidence that the RFK Juniors of the world go on and trade themselves on prediction markets. But there's some kind of self-correcting mechanism for that. And there's been rumors of, people that, like, let's say you're a Trump fan and you want to go buy up the Trump price to make it look like he's got a bigger chance than not. Again, there's this sort of like pressure for the market to correct itself. If it's way out of whack, the further the market gets out of whack, the more financial incentive there is to bring the market more in line. So I think there's sort of these natural mechanisms that kind of keep betting markets on elections sane. That said, I think they're amazing tools, and I think there's nothing to fear. As somebody that's been doing this 10, 12 years, and we've taken bets on all the major elections, I have yet to see evidence of sort of mass manipulation, or any manipulation really, or any small candidates trying to change anything. There was a slight betting scandal in the UK, but it was found out, the police reported it. And like I said, it's illegal in the United Kingdom to be manipulating bets. So you can take care of it like that. I really tip my hat off to Kalshi trying to do this the legal way, going through the front door. I looked at getting CFTC regulation years ago. It's a very complicated process. They had something called a no action letter. And Kalshi decided to go after what's, more of a sort of a financial exchange qualification. And I wish them the best. I hope they're successful. I think it's wrong for the CFTC to be against this. I think it's sort of short-sightedness and fear-mongering. I think all you need to do is look to the success of the UK market. It's open, legal, regulated, and there's no issues with this stuff over here. So I wish Kalshi the best. Now, in terms of Polymarket, they used to take bets in America, and they got sanctioned by the CFTC. And as far as I can tell, they just moved offshore and let anybody with a VPN bet now. So I think part of the reason that Polymarket has gotten so big is they're basically going around the CFTC and the law by what people call regulation arbitrage, or obfuscation, or basically breaking the law by taking bets with people that have a VPN. So I think what's great about the Polymarket story is it kind of shows the potential of this market. But I think it's unfortunate that they had to do it in a way that sort of breaks the rules, skirts the rules, or gets around the law and does it in a sort of a law-breaking kind of way. But it shows the potential of these markets, and I wish Kalshi the best in terms of fighting the CFTC, because they're definitely on. There's no question this stuff should be legal and open in the United States. Next question, question number 2. Last week, the Massachusetts Gaming Commission held a second hearing on the topic of limiting bettors after the first hearing a few months ago was a non-event when sportsbook operators declined to attend. This time around, The operators indeed sent representatives to discuss and defend the practice, while only one operator, Prime Sports, Joe, who's been on the pod, vocally opposed the practice. There are lots of takes and perspectives on the topics. What is mine? Should sportsbooks be allowed to limit bettors? Why not? Should minimum bet limits be introduced? What will come out of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission's process, if anything? First of all, I want to salute the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. This is how government should work. Talk about complicated topics in the open, have a debate, have both sides. To be honest, I think this is government regulation at its finest. Not having a good faith process where both parties can have a conversation. I have a lot of complicated feelings on the topic. So for those of you that are not inside the industry, what most sports books, if not all sports books, do is if you win too much money, they either ban your account or they limit you. The reason they do this is because if you're a good bettor, bookmakers generally have lots of bad prices on the website at all times. 24 hours a day, a bookie has a bad price. Now, it could be because they're bad at bookmaking. It could be because there's bad data. It could be because somebody made an accident. So, for example, Smarkets and SBK, we're pricing around 50,000 things 24 hours a day. And it doesn't take a mathematical genius to know that one of those 50,000 things is going to be mispriced at any time. And so what the bookmakers do is instead of working on their pricing algorithms to make them sharper and sharper or to make their price anomaly detection better, it's easier for them to use a ban hammer and to either severely limit or ban a customer. This is a practice that's been going on since bookmaking started. So it's nothing new, and it's very widely used practice in the UK and widely used practice in the US. So this Massachusetts thing is, should this be allowed? I don't think it should be allowed. I don't know if it should be illegal. That's sort of where I come down on this. I think it's unethical behavior, but I don't know if I want if it's the government's role to sort of limit this practice. Generally speaking, I'm kind of for a transparency first approach. The first thing I think bookmakers should do is show the margin or the vig or the house edge that they have in every sports bet. So very roughly speaking, it depends on the type of bet and the market and blah, blah, blah. But bookmakers on average make about 10% of your bet every time you place a bet. So imagine placing a £100 bet or $100 bet. The bookmaker is making 10 or 10 pounds, $10 out of that, if you like. And this is an incredibly high margin. The interest rates have never been higher and in the US, and the interest rate recently has been about 5%. So if you hold your money in one place for 1 year, you can get 5% on that money. But a bookmaker for one bet on average is making 10% of that. Or if you're buying a house, like the crazy realtor fees that just got sued and they're going to have to knock those down have been 6% every time you buy and sell a house. Or sales tax, if you like, in most states is 6, 7, 8%. You can go on and on and on. All these things that are sort of more complicated transactions than a sports bet have a much, much higher fee. So I think the base issue here is sports books are ripping people off left, right, and center. And that's indeed the reason why I founded Smarkets. Now, the reason I think they rip people off is I think people don't know any better. I think it's not obvious. If something is 3-1, 7-1, 4-1, it's not obvious what the true price is or what the edge should be. So my first advocacy is that sportsbooks should have to publish what the edge is for the house so that people can see that they're paying a 10% margin. In terms of limiting bettors, the reason they do this is because most bookmakers, even though they make a lot of money on the top line, they're very human resource intensive organizations. They're very expensive organizations to run, at least the way they've been traditionally run. And they use a lot of that money to use it for bonuses, incentives. So anytime you have a sign-up bonus or a kickback or a boost or, all that stuff is coming from that 10% margin, plus all the overheads that they have to do. And so the bookmaker's rationale for this is in order to be profitable, the easiest thing for us to do is just to limit people that win this bet. Because if somebody is finding an edge in the market and they're able to go after it over and over again, they're going to hurt the revenue of the sportsbook. So this is an example of they're trying to protect their margin, which every business should do. I just think that if you think about sports betting like a financial market, and I think it deserves to be thought like a financial market, we would not accept this from stock trading or any other sort of financial instrument. Just because it's sort of like shoved in the corner of like the entertainment industry, do we kind of let the bookmakers get away with this? Now, I don't know if it should be illegal. Hats off to the Gaming Commission for bringing this to light and talking about it. I think whether or not it's illegal, I think it should be known. And I think the operators should have to publish when they do this and how they do this. Hats off for them. I think it's a bad practice that bookmakers do. I think bookmakers are ripping people off and nobody knows about it. And that's what we're trying to do at Smarkets is try to let people not get ripped off as much. And I think that's one of the USPs of what Prime Sports is trying to do as well. Question number 3. Lots has happened in the U.S. presidential election since Jason last spoke about it on the podcast. The attempted assassination of Trump, train wreck debate between Biden and Trump, Biden subsequently withdrawing from the re-election. I'm getting sweating reading this. Harris closing the gap in polling numbers, etc. What is Jason's perspective on the race now that we're 45 days away from Election Day? What has he been seeing on the Smarkets exchange as these key developments have unfolded in the last couple of months? So I'm obsessed about the election, and like everybody, I have my opinion, but the TLDR is I have no idea what's going on, and I think it's pretty much in the toss-up range. For those of you that don't obsess over the election in the United States, basically we have this thing called the Electoral College, and it emphasizes the states with rural populations end up having more power than the states with urban, Democratic leaning states. So basically Kamala Harris has to win by 3-4%. This is the conventional wisdom. It doesn't have to work out like this, but the conventional wisdom states Kamala has to win by 3 or 4% the popular vote in order to win the Electoral College. That's because you have states like New York and California, which have millions and millions and millions of votes. 12% of the United States lives in California, and it leans very, very heavily Democratic. So the president with the most votes in the United States doesn't win. It's the president with the most points in all these states that ends up winning. So the key state is looking to be Pennsylvania, and there have just been a few polls that have come out that have shown Kamala slightly ahead. She crushed the debate. I think one of the biggest things that she did in the debate, she looked presidential. She made Donald Trump look small. I think she called him out looking at his face. The fact that Donald Trump couldn't look her in the face, I think really diminished him. He sounded like a crazy old man, like more so than usual. And I think Kamala did a great job with the presentation of, challenging him, saying he's a disgrace, looking at him when she's saying that, calling him out for his ridiculous statements. So I think I don't know if she's quite the underdog, but it's definitely in toss-up territory. And for those of you that are sort of not following, Pennsylvania is going to be the key to this election. So look for polls in Pennsylvania, and we'll see what happens there. In terms of the prediction market, last night I checked, we had Donald Trump at 48 and Kamala at 52. Let me see what we have now. Now we have Kamala at 54 and Donald Trump at 45. So what you're seeing here is a movement in the prediction markets because of the amazing debate she had, and the polls have responded to that. But I think anything can happen. So, obviously I want Kamala to win because Donald Trump is a dangerous person for our country and for the world, but she's got to keep fighting in order to win this. In terms of the assassination attempt, as much as I don't like Donald Trump, I think it's horrible that he was shot at potentially twice. And, I want the Social Security, the Secret Service to protect him. I think political violence is awful, and I want him protected. I don't want him to be shot by an assassin, and I want the government to protect him and keep him safe. Anyway, I'm very nervous about it. That's my emotion. I'm very nervous. I'm kind of like my sport when I was in high school. I was a wrestler, and I would go out there. Sometimes I'd win, sometimes I'd lose, sometimes I'd get the shit beat out of me. And my mom, I could just sometimes, even when during the match, I could just see my mom in knots, like standing on the sideline, being like, Jason, ah. And I know she probably had this, like the biggest pit in her stomach, seeing her little, beautiful, cute son out there getting his ass handed to him by some other muscly man. And she must have felt horrible. And that's kind of the way I feel about watching the election. I feel like my mom watching me wrestling. It's sort of like I'm super nervous about it. In many ways, I want it to be November 6th right now so we can get on with this. But I'm very nervous about it. I think it's really important for Kamala to win. I think Donald Trump, he's destroyed a lot of the trust in our institutions. He's destroyed a lot of the global alliances that we have. And he's an idiot. And he makes America look like a shitty place to be that elects shitty people. And I don't want that. I don't want that for my country. I want my country to keep fighting for democracy and Western values and liberal values and keep being a good steward in the public world order. So that's my rant on the election. Question number 4. With it being September, the betting industry conference circuit is in full swing. Next week is the SBC Summit in Lisbon with over 25,000 delegates. And 2 weeks later is the G2E in Vegas with a similar sized crowd expected. I'm supposed to be at both. For listeners that aren't in the industry and don't attend these events, but hear about them on LinkedIn, Twitter, why don't we do a look behind the curtain? What goes on? What happens at them? Why do I go and what do I do there? Well, there's free food and free drinks at both. So that's nice. I've been going to gambling conferences for a long time and it's been interesting. I remember the first ICE I went to, it used to be this would be like 2008, 2009. It was held at the Olympia Center in London. And it was very sort of like rinky dink is too strong, but it was very parochial, you might call it. So it's primarily an arcade game conference that had, if you go to an arcade, like the pinball machines and the games, and the reason it was together is because there's a lot of overlap between people that make arcade games and slot machines. And so I presume it kind of came up from the arcade game slot machine world. And there was like this tiny little corner for sports betting on the side. I loved going to the conference because they had all the latest arcade games and everything was free. It was like going, as the kid inside me would just loved going to this. Imagine having the latest games and everything was free to play. So it was a fantastic conference. Very rinky dink. Like I said, that's hyperbolic, but you can kind of get the idea. Very small industry. And then now if you go to ICE, it's super professional, super huge. The booth, I think some operators probably spend $2, $3, $4 million just for the booth alone. Gives you a sense of the scale and the size of the ICE conference, which is another big gaming conference that usually happens early in the winter or early in the year. The main reason I go for these is networking and kind of getting a vibe of what's going on in the industry. I'm sure it's not unique to sports betting, but in sports betting, which like I said, is probably true in most industries, people want to help each other. Even though we're competitors, at the end of the day, there's only so many customers to go around. If we all work together and learn from each other's mistakes and figure out what's going on, everybody wins. And hopefully the consumer wins too, if you're not ripping them off too much. But generally speaking, I've always been super friendly with Betfair. I've always been super friendly with Matchbook. I've always been friendly with BetDAC because those are sort of my nearest competitors. And I try to say hi to them. And these conferences are great places to do it because generally speaking, because this industry is kind of a small industry, a lot of the heavy hitters from within the industry go here. And it's a great place to meet. Sometimes I go to the panels, sometimes I speak on panels, but the real value I get is sort of the behind the scenes networking, whether it's a dinner or it's a coffee off to the side, or it's an old colleague that I knew from years ago. It's such a great way to kind of get the zeitgeist of the industry, swap stories, figure out what's going on. G2E in Vegas, it's much more of a casino conference than sports betting, although since sports betting has kind of taken off in the United States, it's a little bit like the arcade game issue that I had, in London years ago. So G2E was always a casino conference with slot machines and poker tables and things like that. But like I said, as the industry's taken off, sports betting has kind of taken to that. It's a huge conference at the Venetian. Every time I go, it's kind of a mix between awe, shock, and I don't know what you'd say, like shame or disgust. I'm not a Vegas fan. The fact that they sort of have a replica of the Eiffel Tower and the Venice canals is kind of very jarring for me. But at the same time, it's so over the top that it's also kind of interesting as well. It's not my favorite place to go. Last year, I ended up going to see U2 at the Sphere, and that blew me away. So if any of you have a chance to go to the Sphere, I couldn't recommend it enough. So yeah, behind the scenes, it's basically networking. It's basically, people that you know, people that you don't know, and trying to swap information and figure out what's going on and what's working for everybody. If you go, you want to try to meet as many people as you can. And that's my advice. Question number 5. What's been happening at Smarkets lately? There's not been a lot of PR public-facing news. What are you and the team focused on? Are there any projects or initiatives? How did the summer Smarkets go? The Olympics, the Euros, the Cricket World Cup. As some of you know, we raised $30 million in 2021. We spent it all, and the revenue didn't grow as much as we wanted it to. So at the end of 22, we cut headcount and we cut our marketing spend, and we kind of went back to basics to grind on what made us great in the first place, which is capital efficiency, grinding on the product, making everything efficient and as strong as we can. We went from 155 people to 90 people. We went from spending $1 million plus on marketing to about $300,000 or $400,000 on marketing. So we really kind of went back to basics, and it's been really, really working for us. So part of the reason we haven't been shouting about Smarkets lately is because we've just sort of been focusing on getting back to the basics. We do have some stuff that we're working on. We just launched SBK. We did a soft launch of SBK in Sweden. We are still working out the kinks, so we haven't announced that publicly or put out press about us going live in Sweden for SBK, but that's one of the big things that we've been working on. In terms of the summer events, the Euros were fantastic for us. The fact that England did as well and got as far as they did was great for us. In terms of the Olympics, almost nobody bets on the Olympics. Everybody, it's funny, very few people that are not from the industry talk to me about sports betting. But one thing everybody asks me is like, is there a lot of betting on the Olympics? Because it's one moment everybody pays attention to sports. And for those of you that aren't in sports betting, almost nobody bets on the Olympics. I ended up going with my kids. I went to the final USA game with my kids, the women's beating Brazil. It was such a great environment there. And I went to a few other Olympic events. Paris smashed it out of the park, and it was kind of a magical time to go to the Olympics. But yeah, so we've been grinding. We keep working on making our product better. We haven't given the love to the exchange in years because we've been focusing on making SBK a tier 1 sportsbook. But now that SBK is kind of beginning to feature parity with the big sportsbooks, we're going to be focusing on giving the exchange some love and keep making our product and pricing better and better. Cool. So thanks very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that. I'd love to do a true office hours episode in the future. So please send your questions. In the show notes, we can post our email, or you can send us a note on Twitter. It's the Betting Pod on Twitter. Please send us a question or comment that you have about the show. We read everything that you send and would look forward to having questions and changing up the format of the show. Also, if anybody has any future guest ideas, I would love to talk to a wide variety of people from the industry. From anything from regulation to pricing to bookmaking to marketing to product design to tech, anything that's interesting in the industry, please reach out if you have a guest idea. So thanks very much for listening. Thanks for trying this new format with me. Hope everybody enjoyed it, and see you all at SBC and G2E very soon.
The Business of Betting podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. 4 out of the top 5 U.S. operators personalize player experiences with Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming industry. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/businessofbetting. And if you like what you see, you will get your first month free.